Hello, everyone. And uh-oh, you stopped sharing. I can't see your screen anymore.
Oh, weird.
Here we go. All right. Welcome to our Mental Health Mondays. And today we have our community partner, Ivat, and Cynthia will be leading the conversation when someone you know is in a harmful relationship, a starter guide. So without further ado, Cynthia, take us away.
Thank you. So I am Cynthia. And yeah, today my presentation is about, when someone you know is in a harmful relationship. This is by no means like an all-encompassing presentation. This is really sort of like the starting guide, starting steps when someone you know is in a harmful, toxic, or abusive relationship. This is not a replacement for like therapy or professional help, but this is just something to do when you are in a position where someone you know might be in a harmful relationship. So to start out, um, some objectives, right? What do I want you to take away from today's presentation? I want you to be able to identify the characteristics of what a healthy or an unhealthy or harmful relationship looks like. I want you to also be able to identify strategies to support a loved one who is in a harmful relationship, and then identify resources and organizations to better support someone who is in a harmful relationship. And I'll be providing that at the end of this presentation. Um, so to begin, types of relationships, right? Relationships typically fall into one of several different categories, and sometimes these categories can overlap. So we can have relationships like family relationships or friendships, our acquaintances, so people that we know but maybe aren't very close with. So people like, distant coworkers or a friend of a friend, romantic relationships, work relationships, situational relationships. When we think about these relationships that can be harmful, oftentimes we think about romantic relationships, and a lot of the content within this PowerPoint also pertains a lot to these romantic relationships. But some of the things that we talk about in terms of like characteristics of healthy relationships or characteristics of unhealthy relationships can fall into any of these categories. So there can be an unhealthy relationships within family members or within friendships or between coworkers or you and your boss, right? So keeping this in mind as we continue this presentation, it's not just romantic relationships that can be unhealthy or harmful or abusive. So, going into it, what are some characteristics of healthy relationships? So, these are things like mutual respect, right? We both respect each other. We trust one another. We're honest with one another. We compromise, right? It's not just one person making decisions or everything that one person wants is how things go. Individuality, right? So I can be separate from you. I can go and do the things that I want to do as well. It's not just that we have to do everything together or that our personalities are so enmeshed with each other. There's good communication, there's anger control, fighting fair. So with that, it's important because a lot of the times when we think about healthy relationships, sometimes people assume that there isn't fighting or there isn't arguments or that we're not on the same page. But there are times where we can have arguments and be on different pages and not agree with one another. That's completely fine, but we're going to fight fair, right? We're not going to start calling each other names or being aggressive physically or even verbally, right? So fighting fair, problem solving with one another, understanding one another, supporting one another, and then moving at a comfortable pace. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means in the next slide. So now talking a little bit about characteristics of unhealthy relationships. So controlling, right? If someone's controlling what you do, who you're able to talk to, what you're wearing, where you're able to go, what social media you're able to use, right? That's control. Hostility or intensity. When we think about intensity, a part of that could also be that comfortable pace, or in this case, an uncomfortable pace. So trying to move too quickly, saying I love you like 2 weeks into the relationship, trying to move in very quickly when you yourself, the other partner, isn't very comfortable with that. Dishonesty, disrespect, dependence, like I'm making you be dependent on me, intimidation, possessiveness, isolation, and violence. Um, this next slide, um, one of my colleagues used this in a presentation that we presented to you guys on Mental Health Monday a couple of months ago about unhealthy and healthy relationships, or I don't know if it was relationships or communication, but he used this to describe healthy and unhealthy relationships. And I thought it was a very good visual at distinguishing between healthy, unhealthy, and abusive relationships. So the different characteristics, what people embody when they are within these relationships, or what we see within these relationships. Now, a lot of the things that happen in abusive relationships obviously overlap with unhealthy relationships. But sometimes the things that happen in abusive relationships don't happen in unhealthy relationships. So keeping that in mind, a relationship can be unhealthy without necessarily being abusive. But sometimes we, as sort of third parties or outside parties of a relationship, might see these characteristics within our friends' relationships or our families' relationships. So when we talk about when someone that we know is in a harmful relationship, looking at these left or the right two sections to see what we're looking out for when we do have a loved one who is in a harmful relationship. So things like, communicating in a hurtful or threatening way, mistreating, accusing the other of cheating, denying their abusive actions, controlling, isolating from their partner from others. The isolation, I think, is a really big piece because that's very, very present in abusive relationships, because an abuser or perpetrator of abuse doesn't want their, partner or victim or the survivor of the abuse to have that support system, because if they have that support system, they'll likely be able to leave that relationship. And so isolating them lessens their chances of being able to have that support system. So keeping all of that in mind. So now, let's say, you're saying to yourself, my friend is in an unhealthy relationship. Some things to keep in mind is that they might not realize that they're in that type of relationship. And if they do realize, they can struggle with leaving. And there's a variety of different reasons, psychologically, financially, economically, physically, why they might not want to leave. And so the thing that is really important is that your friend must be the one to decide to leave, right? So you can support your friend, but they're the ones who have to decide to end that relationship. And whatever decision that they make, it's important that you respect their feelings while also showing them that you care about them. This is a very important piece. Leaving an unhealthy relationship, especially if it's an abusive or hostile relationship, is very difficult. And oftentimes the statistics say that it takes people about 7 times to leave a relationship that is abusive or unhealthy. And so as a loved one, what is it that you can do, right? What are some steps that you can take? A big step is to actively and patiently listen to them, right? If they are in an unhealthy relationship where they spend the majority of their time with the person who is unhealthy, they likely don't have someone who is actively listening to them, right? And so actively and patiently listening to what their experiences is, how they're feeling, what they're going through is going to be really helpful so that they feel like they're being heard and understood. Providing respect and honesty and open communication, helping them see that abuse isn't okay and that it's not their fault. A lot of individuals within these abusive relationships have a lot of self-blame, right? They feel a lot of guilt, either because they stayed in the relationship or because they feel like the abuse is their fault, because that's what the abuser or perpetrator of abuse has convinced them of. So trying to help them understand that it isn't their fault. And then focusing on the friend, right? We don't want to focus on the perpetrator of the abuse when we're having these conversations. You want to focus on your friend, your loved one. Don't judge them, especially if they are struggling to leave, right? It can be very hard not to judge them. And we'll see in a couple of slides how that sometimes presents itself when we have our own opinions about, like, well, why would you let someone do this to you, right? Like, let's just walk away. Sometimes it's not that easy. Again, and there's so many different reasons why someone will stay in that type of relationship. Sometimes, again, like I mentioned earlier, financially, they don't have the financial means to be able to leave, especially if the abuser is in control of the finances or doesn't allow them to work, or if they are working, forces them to give them their paycheck. Sometimes there's fear that the abuser will come after them, and that's a very real fear. And sometimes it just feels like there's no one there to support them to be able to leave, right? They have no other choice, especially if they are isolated. And then don't contact the partner or post about it on social media. This is important. Sometimes family members or friends will try to get in contact with the partner to maybe, threaten them and say, I know what you're doing, don't do that again or else. But this can actually make it harder for the victim or survivor of the abuse. Sometimes they'll come home after you've sent that message and, their partner has received the message and now the experience is even worse for them. And then offer solutions, but allow them to make their own decisions. This is important because if they are with someone who is abusive or who is unhealthy, they don't have a lot of autonomy in that relationship and therefore in their life. And so allowing them the autonomy and the ability to be able to make their own decisions puts them in a little bit more of control of their lives versus you just sort of making them do whatever it is that you feel is right for them to do. And so more of what you can do. If you are a teenager or a young adult who has a friend or family member or an acquaintance or anyone that you know who is experiencing or who is within an unhealthy or abusive relationship, identify a trusted adult, right? A parent, an aunt, a guidance counselor, a faith-based adult, or if you're at work, HR or a manager or supervisor, someone who can help navigate this situation. Support your friend after the relationship ends. If they are finally able to, leave that relationship, yes, they are in a better place in terms of not being in that relationship anymore, but they still need that support, right? A lot of the emotional and sometimes even physical damage that is done within these unhealthy relationships need to be mended and supported after they leave that relationship. Practice self-care and boundaries is also very important for you as the loved one watching someone else in this type of relationship. Secondary trauma is very real and very common, especially in these situations. Someone supported or supporting someone in an abusive relationship can take a very mental and emotional toll on you, especially if that person isn't willing to leave yet. And so knowing that they're in this relationship that you know that they shouldn't be in can be very emotionally taxing. And so being able to take care of yourself emotionally as well and set those boundaries is going to be important in order to be able to continue to support them. And then helping them obtain professional help when they're ready, right? Sometimes when they're within the relationship, they're not really ready to receive like therapy or mental health services. But once they are ready, supporting them, helping them find those services, helping them make their appointments, take their appointments, things like that. And so what can you say? So begin a respectful conversation about your concern when you are seeing these behaviors or patterns and asking things like, how are you feeling about your relationship? Saying things like, I've noticed that you feel bad when, so-and-so gets jealous. Does that happen often? You seem upset with so-and-so today. Do you want to talk about it? Right? Things to be able to let them know that you're noticing certain things without sort of giving it all away right away or making them feel like, you're judging them or even judging their partner. Even though their partner is the unhealthy person in this situation, if they feel like you're judging their partner, it can sometimes feel like an extension of you judging them. And so we don't want to start off the conversation in that way, right? And so what else can you say, right? Things like, how are things going in your relationship? Similar to the last slide, things seem intense with you and so, can we talk about that? This allows you to be able to be a little bit more honest about, again, the intensity of what you're seeing, the negativity that you're seeing. And things like, I care about you, but I've noticed that our friends are feeling hurt by you lately. Okay. This is especially true if we're starting to see that isolation piece coming into play, right? You see that your friend is no longer coming to the hangouts or canceling last minute. Or changing plans last minute, different things like that. So letting them know that some of these behaviors aren't just impacting them, but are starting to impact the relationships that they have with other people. And that's where you can express the concern of, we're starting to see you be a little bit more isolated. That's a concern, right? That's a red flag. That's something that we see in these unhealthy and abusive relationships. And so other things, like I've noticed that your partner says mean things to you, doesn't let you go out as much, puts you down in front of other people. I'm concerned about that. Is there anything that you want to talk about? So especially if you are very close with this person, making specific comments can be helpful, to let them know that, it's not just a general concern. There are specific examples that I can point to that, some unhealthy behaviors are occurring. And so other things that you can say, right? Other ways to start this conversation. Things like, I'm worried about you. This must be very difficult for you, especially if they admit, right, that things are going on that they're not comfortable with. How can I help, right? I'm here for you no matter what, and you are not alone. This is important, especially if, again, they are isolated in this relationship. They feel like they don't have support, reminding them that they do have that support. They do have someone there looking out for them, someone who wants to support them, and someone who is willing to help them, not just before the relationship ends, but even after the relationship ends. And so with that, I want to show this video. I'm going to speed it up to like 1.25 speed, just because it's a little slow. So bear with me there.
Six ways to help your friend in a toxic relationship.
Maybe not.
Sometimes relationships don't just take a turn for the worse, but they can pose danger or even be life-threatening. Abuse and manipulative behavior can be hard to detect, which is why the victim often chooses to stay and attempts to normalize the situation. Unfortunately, this is how toxic relationships are prolonged. We understand how hard it can be to intervene if you have a friend or know someone who may be involved with an unhealthy romantic partner. If you're scared for that person, but maybe unsure of what to do, we want to offer some advice. From Psych to Go, here are 6 ways to help your friend in a toxic relationship. 1. Don't judge or criticize them for being in the relationship. Even though it's unfavorable, understand that you should still be respectful of your friend's.
So I'm hearing that the video is awesome. Is it still lost? You can't see it? Okay, never mind.
Choice to be with their partner, and that they have the right to make their own mistakes. Though our first instinct may be to act protective over those we care about or who may be in danger, it's complicated when your friend cannot recognize right away that they're walking into a fire. Perspective can only be developed from understanding, and understanding from compassion. Your friend will be less likely to take in your perspective if you are judging or criticizing their actions. Instead, recognize that love is hardly ever logical and that getting swept away in emotions is expected. 2. Approach them gently about the.
Okay. I'm hearing again that you can't see the video. No, that's okay. I can move on to the next slide. I can share the video. Okay. Says it's working. Okay.
Concerns you have for them. It's important to approach your friend gently about your concerns because you don't want them to feel upset or smothered. Chances are when you act out of line, your friend will most likely confide in their partner, and their partner may manipulate your friend into believing that you're jealous or insecure. In reality, you'll only be helping their partner obtain more power over your friend. When you talk to your friend, choose a quiet and comfortable environment, such as going for a walk in the park or eating ice cream at the beach, before delving into difficult conversation. We understand how intimidating it can be to bring up the topic, but with enough heart and understanding, it can steer in the right direction. 3. Give your friend a boost in their self-esteem. Let them know that they are loved. Stephen Kobosky, author of The Perks of Being a Wallflower, writes, "We accept the love we think we deserve. Sometimes I think we're afraid of letting someone in who actually treats us right because all we've known is pain, disaster, and destruction. How do you even begin to tell someone that they deserve more than they've got when they've never been exposed to that kind of love? You can't just expect them to know what a healthy relationship is. Instead, you can lead them there and show them what it means. Help your friend build up their self-esteem and let them know that you love them. Encourage them to be kind to themselves, listen to their fears and needs, and show them that they're capable of great things. 4. Tell them about your past experience in unhealthy relationships. If you've been in an unhealthy relationship before, let them know why it didn't work and why it had to end. Let your friend know that you are exactly where they are right now and that the signs weren't always obvious. And sometimes you may have even made the same excuses for your ex's manipulative or abusive behavior. You're lucky if you end up marrying your best friend and they're your first and only relationship partner, but usually it takes a couple of tries to find someone who's good for us. The best thing about failed relationships, though, is that they make us wiser lovers. And by sharing your lessons with your friend, that's when their perspective can shift and start to redevelop as well. 5. Be honest and check in on them often. You've already recognized that your friend needs support getting out of their toxic relationship. Don't distance yourself or give up altogether because your friend may not heed your advice. They may not see the signs that you've seen, but that doesn't mean that they won't down the road. Please, don't lose hope. Your friend needs you now more than ever, so be honest. Tell them that you care about their safety, that they may be making excuses, but you're not. This may cause your friend to feel resentment towards you, and arguments may even erupt from your disagreements, but your persistence can save their life. 6. If things start to get out of hand, seek a professional. First, inform your friend's family about the situation if they aren't already aware of it. The more support your friend has, the better. If things begin to get out of hand and you notice your friend is in danger, talk to professionals such as a guidance counselor or a psychologist. We hope things don't have to escalate to this level, but if your friend needs immediate assistance, it's best to call police for help. Trauma may follow, and it takes more than just time for someone to heal from toxic relationships. Let your friend know that there are resources they can turn to, and most importantly, continue being there for them. They're going to be scared, hurt, and confused, but let them know that they don't have to face those emotions alone. Do you know someone who's in a toxic relationship? We understand how hard it can be to watch them struggle and the challenge of intervening. Please share your story with us by leaving a comment down below.
Trying to provide them with that love and support, reminding them that you're there for them. If you are someone who has had a history of being in an unhealthy or toxic relationship, providing them with your experience, and seeking professional help if needed, right? So what are some things to avoid? It might be difficult, but these are some of the things that we don't want to engage in when we are talking with our loved one. But things like, you don't want to tell them that you always hated their abuser. Telling them "I told you so" is probably one of the worst things that you could do. Don't ask them how they could have let the abuse happen, right? That's definitely an example of victim blaming. Don't begin with a mindset of doubt that closes them off to you, right? You don't want to be like, really, that actually happened? I don't really think that I see that person doing that, right? You want to try to provide, again, that open and honest communication. Don't become angry with them. Don't accuse or blame them. Don't tell them what their next steps, emotions, or long-term decisions should be. Again, you can provide them with some options of what they could do, but don't try to push a certain agenda or decision on them. Don't tell them to leave their abuser immediately. Again, allow them to make that decision for themselves. Don't tell them that you're planning to call the cops. And don't tell them that you're going to confront the abuser. A lot of that can instill feelings of fear, and we want to instead instill a feeling of hope and support, right? And so it can be difficult because the best time to process these emotions is after the victim has left the abusive situation and that they're in a safe and healthier place. And so you, as the loved one, have every right to feel hurt or scared or angry or sad for them. You can set boundaries, but the initial conversation with the victim or survivor is not the right time to express those feelings. You want to focus on connecting with your emotions of the loved one, or the emotions of the loved one. How you respond to them in that first conversation, especially, will set the tone for the decisions that come afterwards. Telling them what to do, making threats, or reacting in a negative and angry way can feel very similar to the experience that they have with their abusers. So we want to avoid that as best as we can and do our best to listen and show immense amounts of like love and support and grace for the victim of the abuse. And so these are just some really quick graphics of what often happens, right? A friend comes to you explaining their experience, and they say, I can't believe you let him do that to you. That could have never happened to me. I would have just left. I would have said, a certain thing. And then the victim or survivor says, but it didn't happen to you. It happened to me, and I did the best I could with what I had. Right. We don't want to judge the person who is in front of us. We don't want them to feel like I would have done something better than you did. Because the truth is that everyone who is in these situations are doing the best that they can with what they have. With what they have emotionally, what they have physically, what they have financially, what type of support and love that they have on the outside, or at least the love and support that they feel that they have on the outside. And so again, providing that support and not providing judgment. And so the bottom line, right, when someone you care about is in an abusive relationship, you can show your support by listening, asking them how you can help, and providing them with resources. Even though you might feel strongly that they should leave the situation or the relationship, pushing them too hard or giving an ultimatum might isolate them from you. It might push them away just more. And so it is much more helpful to let them know that you will continue to be there for them and help them in any way that you can. So again, that support and that love is going to be very important in that situation. And so with that being said, these are a few resources that can be helpful to someone who is in an abusive relationship, who might not be ready to leave, but they still want a certain level of support that maybe they don't feel or you don't feel you can provide. For teens, there's a National Teen Dating Abuse Helpline, which you can call or text. The National Domestic Violence Hotline also provides call and text 24/7. And then there's RAINN, which is the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. So this provides information on sexual assault. So these are just a few resources. There are a couple of others that I could also provide later. But yeah, that is the end of my presentation. Here are some references. Yeah, thank you guys so much.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you so much for this great information, especially around the resources and what to avoid and how to support one another in helping individuals, family, friends, even clients exit out of unhealthy relationships, and even differentiating the difference between abuse and an unhealthy relationship as well. So thank you so much. If there's any questions, feel free to reach out to us at pekgsuame.org and check out the website, where we'll also have additional resources and the PowerPoint that you can follow along with this video. So thank you and have a great rest of your day.